and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to welcome everybody to the 2018 Hampstead School District Deliberative Session. And before we get started, I'd like to introduce people that are here. And to the right of me is Nancy Lacasse, and she's our school clerk. And I'm the moderator, Neil Reardon. After Nancy, we have Jason Cipriano. He's the vice chair of the Hampstead School Board. Next to him, we have Karen Yasenka. After that, we have Caitlin Parnell, and I think it's Kathleen, I can't see her, there she is. Kathleen Abruzzi, and lastly, Jim Sweeney. These are our school board. And members of the administration here today, we have our superintendent, Dr. Earl Metzler is here tonight, and we have Dr. Roxanne Wilson, she's the assistant superintendent, and then we have Jeff Dowd. I talked to him earlier. Where's Jeff? Oh, there, right there, I'm blind tonight. He's our business administrator. Now, I'd like to announce some people. This is a meeting for the Hampstead citizens on the warrant article. And there's several warrant articles that we're going to discuss. There's 5 in total tonight. So the only people that are usually allowed to speak are people that are registered voters. However, there's a group of people who aren't registered voters. I'm going to read off their names. And the reason that we may want them to speak is because they have information and some expertise that we need. So if anybody has an objection with any of these people speaking, you better say something, because I'm going to just say they have the permission to speak because of their knowledge that they bring to the table here. Dr. Roxanne Wilson, she's from out of town, but I'm going to suggest she can speak. Jim O'Shaughnessy, he's legal counsel. I'm going to suggest he can speak. Doris Bucco, she's director of curriculum. Karen Gallagher, I don't know all these people, but I hope you're here. Finance. Francine Flynn, she here. Dillard Collins, the principal of the Central School. Deanna Poulin, the assistant principal. Maria Denola, principal of the middle school. I saw her earlier. Yes, there you are. Beth Stevenson, assistant principal of the Hampstead Middle School. Dr. Cliff Dancy, director of technology. There you are, Cliff. Christo Kufos. Hope I got that right. He is director of facilities. Nancy Lewis-Sell, director of human resources. We have Gina Barone, Trident LLC, and Paul Pandolina, Trident LLC. I think they're going to speak about one of the warrant articles later on, and they're not from town. Barrett Salter and Keith McBay and Craig Jones and Dennis Myers, and they're all architects or part of Bonnet and Page and Stone. Lastly, there's Tom Geary, who's here, and he is business operations coordinator, I'm told. So let's get into the articles themselves. The first article that we have, let me read the warrant article, okay? This is the first session of the deliberative, called the deliberative session. So to the inhabitants of the school district of the town of Hampstead, New Hampshire, qualified to vote in district affairs. We're here for the first session of the annual meeting, otherwise known as deliberative session. You are hereby notified to meet the Hampstead School, Middle School, where we are right now, 28 School Street, Hampstead, on Tuesday, the 6th of February at 7 p.m. That's what we're doing right now. This session shall consist of explanation, that's what we can do, explanation, discussion, debate of warrant articles, Articles 2 through 5. Warrant articles may be amended, subject to some restrictions. Warrant articles whose wording is prescribed by law cannot be amended. Warrant articles that are amended shall be placed on the official ballot for final vote on the main motion as amended. No warrant article should be amended to eliminate the subject matter of the article. There's been a lot of litigation about that, so hopefully town school council and I can help people out with that if they try to make an amendment that we think is improper. After tonight's meeting, what we're doing, we prepared the ballot is what we're doing, so these warrant articles go on the ballot either as is or as amended. The second session of the annual meeting, voting. This is when we vote secretly with ballots, and we vote on the warrant articles 1 through 5, and they'll be conducted by official ballot to be held in conjunction with town meeting, which is held on Tuesday the 13th of March in Hampstead Middle School. So here again, And the polls will be open 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. So let's go right into the articles themselves. Article 1, election of officers. To choose the following school district officers: school board member, 3-year term, 3-year term. There's nothing we can do about this. This goes to the secret ballot. So I'm going to suggest that Article 1 is hereby forwarded to the March 13th secret ballot, the second session annual meeting voting. Article 2. Article 2 is a bond issue. And I don't know, do we have something on the screen? Yes, good, it's up there. Article 2, bond issue, Hampstead Central School repair, renovation, and renewal project / 20-year bond. The article states, shall the voters of the Hampstead School District raise and appropriate the sum of $7,400,000 for the Hampstead Central School repair, renovation, and renewal project, and authorize the issuance of not more than $7,400,000 of bonds or notes in accordance with the provisions of the Municipal Finance Act, RSA 33, and authorize the district to issue and negotiate such bonds or notes and to determine the rate of interest thereon, to apply for, accept, and expend any state or other aid that may be available for said project, and further raise and appropriate an additional sum of $131,851.56 for the first year's interest payment of the bond. And it looks like there's a blurb here. It says 3/5 majority vote required. So by law, with deliberative session, that means that 60% people have to vote for this in order for it to pass. So I know if there's been a majority vote in the past, that's not enough. It's got to be like a supermajority in order to bond the town for 10 years. So this particular bond article is recommended by the school board 5-0-0. And can I recognize someone from the school board to move this article forward so we can discuss it?
So moved, Mr. Moderator.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, and I know the school board has speakers for this. Who you want to speak first, Karen, to this article?
Yeah, with your permission, Mr. Moderator, I'd like to just give a brief history on how we got to this point.
Go ahead.
Thank you. In addition to having a talented leadership team and committed staff and a sound curriculum, a successful school program requires a facility that is clean, safe, in good repair, and meets space and programmatic needs. So after last year's election, the board spent a considerable amount of time assessing and evaluating not only the design plan and the election results, but also the overall conditions that exist within Central School. Our findings led us in a different direction. The board voted unanimously to scrap the existing design plan, which originated in 2005, and start fresh with a design that captures the needs of a 21st century elementary school, including safety and security features, appropriate educational space based on program requirements, energy-efficient renovations, and a design that meets all current building codes and regulations. The Hampstead Central School Construction Committee was formed for the purpose of working with all members of the construction team to advance the project now known as the Hampstead Central School Repair, Renovation, and Renewal Project. In keeping with starting anew, the theme for this project is Building Hampstead's Future. The board also recognized the added value in working with professionals in the industry. The Hampstead School District hired Trident's Project Advantage Group to be our owner's project manager, Dennis Myers, PA, the architects, and builder, Bonnet, Page, and Stone Corporation. An important piece of this process for us was to collect information from all the stakeholders, administrators, teachers, support staff, custodians, and parents. A public forum was held so community members could voice their opinions and tell us what they would like to see in the school. The important takeaway was a desire for a community space to be used by Hampstead residents. So over the year, a lot of serious, intensive work has taken place on the part of many people, and a great deal of consideration has been given to every aspect of this project, keeping in mind what is in the best interest of all Hampstead residents. The school board recommends that the town support this initiative as we believe the time is right to advance this long overdue project. The Hampstead School Board would like to thank the community for its continued support of our schools and of our students, as it is instrumental in achieving our mission, which is to provide challenging educational experiences that prepare all students to succeed to their potential in a changing world. And now, with your permission, Mr. Moderator, I would like to invite architect Craig Jones to present the
You get recognized to speak.
Article 2.
Anybody who speaks, I'm going to ask them to, when they go to the mic, to say who they are, and they'll be recognized by the moderator.
He's using that one.
You want this?
You're over there.
No, it's in there.
No, it's not. It's not.
Oh, it's not?
No, he's going to tab over to it.
Okay.
Next slide.
Yes, thank you for having me here tonight. My name is Craig Jones. I'm with Dennis Myers, the architects. And to give you a little background, Dennis Myers, the architects, is a firm based in Manchester. Dennis Myers is the leader of that firm. He started it 38 years ago. And we are currently 6 architects and 1 other staff member. We have been doing a number of projects over the years. Obviously, education is one of them. The firm has done about 20 public schools, 10 private schools, work on universities. We also do other projects like institutional work, occasional house, theater that we're working on currently. So we have a large portfolio of different projects that we do. Schools is one of them. I get the opportunity tonight to walk you through the project and what is being proposed. So why is this project being proposed? And I just want to put out there that what else would we do but want to take care of our future generation? That's the first why. We take care of the future generation, and we want to provide a safe place for them. And we want to provide the best educational environment that we can. So the first piece of what I'm going to show you is an assessment of what the school is today. Then I will show you what is being proposed. So this first portion is essentially any deficiencies that we found in the school that needed to be addressed. They are going to be in the categories of safety and security, code upgrades, building efficiency, and other space deficiencies. To help you orient, I talk about the different building campaigns that have gone on over the years. The building originally started, the building originally was built in the 40s. It's the older piece up here. Then there was an addition in the 60s. And then a much larger campaign in the 80s. So when I speak about these different parts of the building, you'll be able to orient yourself. The first one, safety and security. Safety and security was something that came up as a theme numerous times, and if you're following the news, you'll understand why, that there needs to be a safe, controlled access in the school, within the school, and around the school. So the first piece that we noticed is we came for our first meeting and we walked up to a door and then had to look for where's the office. And the administration is located on the 2nd level. That is a potential place where it'd be easy to gain access. Maybe a student is walking by and lets somebody in that they shouldn't have. There's a number of different scenarios. But we wanted to address that controlled access point to keep the school safe. There are monitors there. There are video cameras that help you see what's going on, but it doesn't have a person up front. There's also other access points with the internal access to the gymnasium that are a safety concern. There are portable classrooms in the back of the school. Most of you are familiar with them. The students have to go between those two, between the school and the portables. And the portables have a number of different issues that came up, some building efficiency and things like that. But really, there's a safety concern of having them going back and forth between those during the day, or having a student that needs to go to the restroom because there are no restrooms in the portables. And they have to either be able to go by themselves or have an extra staff member to help them go between the schools. Also, there are no fire sprinklers currently in the school, which today's building codes, that's a requirement. Sliding into the second phase, or the second point, was building code requirements. Again, the fire sprinklers, that's the first one that would come up. There is no handicap accessibility at the portables. There would be need to be powered doors, and some, a lot of other money put into that. And there are some non-compliant stair railings, and there's a non-compliant stair that's in the older 60s wing. The next phase under code requirements, we noticed that the restroom count didn't match what is required for today's standards, not only at the gymnasium, but also on the upper level of the school. And there are drinking fountains that are required. Another thing under building code is that there is a known structural issue in the school. It's in the library, and it's been monitored over the years, but it continues to move. We put in another monitoring device just to be able to see how much movement we were getting, and we got some extra movement this year when the snow hit, we got some snow loads on it. But that's something that really needs to be repaired. Hallways in the school are not currently up to the fire code requirements. They really need to be, needs to be a fire partition down all the hallways. The doors need to be changed out to make a fire barrier, and they need to have door closers on them. So, we're looking at a lot of money for things that are not flashy, things that really don't help the education needs other than keeping our students safe. In the 60s wing, building efficiency was a big one. We have the entire 60s wing that is built off the back of the school. It is uninsulated CMU, so it's just a 1 foot thick piece of concrete between you and the outside. And in the summer, it's hot. I was up there on a day in the summer, and it was 95 in the classroom. During the winter, it's really cold. They can get down into the 50s at night. I mean, they've been putting a lot of money into heating those spaces so that the students can be somewhat comfortable, but you get drafts during the day. So along with that, the roof needs to be replaced. The windows also are not energy efficient, and you can get some drafts off of those windows. Heard stories of leaving a glass of water on the windowsill and seeing it frozen the next morning. There are ventilation and heating needs that are required. You can see on the side of the building, the ventilation is pulled directly from the outside, and this is a potential concern because that's where drop-off occurs, and there are cars that would be parked out there, and the gas fumes are getting pulled directly into the classrooms. Also, under building efficiency, the portable classrooms are, they're just really thin-walled structures, and so they're very expensive to heat, and especially when each one has their own little heating system. This blends us into space deficiencies, and it is the desire of the board and the school to meet all of the state of New Hampshire educational standards. Those standards are outlined as how many square feet is required per student. So anything that is new that is built would need to meet the standards. Anything that's existing, they just need to be able to manage the number of students that are in that classroom. And that has helped develop how many students they do want to teach in a classroom, which is, it's always better, the fewer, but we have 3 classrooms that are undersized by 300 square feet. That would be about a third of the size that it should, or yeah, a third smaller than it should be. So those classrooms really can no longer be used as classrooms. So that, that's one of the potential problems. As we also look at this going forward, the enrollment currently at Hampstead Central School is at 470 students. It is growing in this area. There will be a larger enrollment, and by 2021 there will be over 500 students, so there's like a 6% increase in the number of students over that time period. When we're looking at what the school needs, you need to look at not just the building, but you need to look at the program and the other administrative tasks that go on in the building. So we looked at a district-wide solution that would include special education office for the district, which is currently in the school. It's just located in the center of the school that's hard to get to for the general public. The district IT could be consolidated. The district maintenance could be consolidated. So these are some of the strategies to look at what could potentially free up some space elsewhere and be utilized within the school. The portable classrooms, because they're so inefficient, they really are at the end of their life and will very soon require a lot more money that needs to be put into them. So the strategy is to say the classrooms they've just met the end of their life and they need to find a new home. Some other programmatic things is the use of the gymnasium, and that's both during the day and in the evening. The gymnasium can be used by the public, but it's really hard because there are a number of other functions that are going on. So there is a desire to use that gym in a better way. Currently, the half of the gymnasium is partitioned off so that it can be used for cafeteria, and it's putting a squeeze on how many classes that the gymnasium can be used for. Also, there's a desire to have a cafeteria that the community can use, and there can be in-school gatherings that take place there. So this is, starting to look at program-wise what could be good for not just the school, but an outreach to the community as well. These are the small classrooms right here. This is in the 40s wing, so they would have been built to a standard a long time ago. And those 3 classrooms just don't work for today's standards. Also, there's a couple small offices that are being used for one-on-one teaching. They're old closets, and that's how they're being used as offices today. So obviously the desire is to not use the old closets for office space. Also, being able to reorganize the school so that currently there's the second grade is split between the upper level and the main level, and there isn't a lot of cohesion with the second graders. And so being able to reorganize the school so that all class grades are together in one location, or as you work around the school, they're together. Another space deficiency is how the circulation works for the drop-off and pickup. The portables in the back are in the way, so when the portables are moved, it frees up a lot more room for a much cleaner way to be able to drive back there, park, pick up the students. So the process, this kind of starts blending into what are the solutions to the deficiencies that have been found in the school. And if you If you've been in the community for a long time, you remember that since 2005, there has been a campaign to try and improve the school. I was able to pour through a lot of those reports from 2012 or 2010 through 2016, and there, nothing has changed in a lot of those documents. Some things have been upgraded over time, but we went back and looked through all those conditions reports to see what was suggested then and what needs to be done today. So then we did our own facility assessment, and the facility assessment brought out the items I just pointed out, but there's actually there's a whole list of a lot more items that are pretty much building code items. And then we did a community outreach. Community outreach was in early September. We invited the community to come, and we brainstormed that evening, and we got a lot of great ideas, and we heard from the community how they wanted to use the school or how they thought that would further the educational needs of the students. We took all that information back into our steering committee, and we've been meeting bi-weekly ever since, I guess it would have been the September meeting and a few before that, and that led to the conceptual design. So here with the conceptual design, we took on this mantra of the 3 R's, which is just a new take on the reading, writing, and arithmetic. So we took that educational idea and we are repairing, renovating, and renewing. One strategy would be to say, let's get rid of the school and let's build new. And that certainly is not cost effective and not necessary. So we looked at all the repair items. We can look back at our facility assessment and say this is what needs to be repaired. Then there are the areas within the school that can be repurposed, reutilized, and those existing building areas can be efficiently organized so that those older portions of the school can be used in a better way today. And then we get to the renew part. When we got to the space constraints and needs for other items or other ways to utilize the school, that's what the renew is. So again, to orient you on the site, we have the 60s, 80s, and 40s wing, and this next slide shows the new components. So in the new portion of the building, in building new, what we came up with was taking care of, number one, the main entry. The main entry in administration is moved down to the front part of the school, and that's a new building component, which is about 2,000 square feet. In the back of the building, because we wanted to do as much work in one location, as opposed to building a number of different pieces around the existing site, we built in a library with 2 classrooms above, because then we can reutilize the existing library for classrooms. And then we brought the music out of the portables into the school and utilized a way to have the cafeteria and community room built off the backside of the gymnasium so that the existing kitchen can be used in the community room. So, we're not building a whole new kitchen, it's just the new community room space. And to orient you here at the front entry, you can see this is the new administrative and entry area. In the back of the building, we have from closest the cafeteria and community room, and you can see this red arrow indicates that's how the community could use the school after hours. They would have an entrance that they wouldn't have to go through the main entry or through the other parts of the school. This is one access point that they can enter into just the community room or just to the music room. And there's a new set of bathrooms back here so that it can be a self-contained unit. Then we have the music room, and then in the back on the far end is the library and 2 classrooms above that. This is back in the back of the building. If you can, I don't know if you can see on this little site plan, but we've got, again, here's a look at the library with the 2 classrooms above and the community room and music room that stretches across the back. And we've proposed insulating that 60s wing so we can just put a new skin on it. The interior is in decent condition. The square footages are right. It's just a matter of making it all look like it goes together, and to also insulate that 60s wing so that we can get that really energy efficient and replace the windows. Also, the rear drop-off has been reorganized so that it looks and feels more like a drop-off and not just a paved area with painted lines. In terms of new construction, this slide just shows the new components in the color. So at the top of the screen, you can see those 2 classrooms. This is the upper level. There are 2 4th grade classrooms that have been added to the back. They're right over top of the library, a set of bathrooms, music room, and the community room. And you can begin to see how there's a big, circular path that you can get through the school. We have to put in an additional elevator, and also in the orange down here you can see the new front entry. And now that really blocks off or creates a controlled access point to get into the school. So what we've improved here is the safety. We've improved the code violations, which some of those were restrooms. We've addressed the space deficiencies, which with the additional classrooms, the cafeteria, the library, the music room. And all of this leads to a way for not just the school to be a better learning environment, but it also leads to the community being able to utilize these spaces. Because in addition, we've picked up this courtyard space with a little amphitheater, which would be a nice function space not only for the students, but in the summers the community could use that as well. This slide shows any of the areas that are remodeled. It's kind of hard. The remodel really goes throughout the entire school, but these are some of the larger components. So you can see how in terms of remodel, we've put a new skin all the way around the 60s wing. We've split the 3 small classrooms to make 2 classrooms that are appropriately sized. We've taken the library and we've divided that in 2 where actually it originally was divided, but that takes care of the structural issue. And we have some structural issues to take care of directly underneath that in the lower level. We have the nurse's room, the kitchen for the cafeteria. These are spaces that get remodeled in the new plan. So again, we've taken care of a lot of the safety that's been improved because of the fire sprinklers, code violations, again because of the fire sprinklers. Hallways are now appropriately safe so that they have good access to the school. The building efficiency is addressed, and there's just all of those different space constraints as we begin to, as we talked about it, right size the rooms. These are some of the blow-ups or bigger pictures of just the new building components. You can see the library with a hall access that that connects different parts of the school. So from the 60s wing all the way through the gymnasium and back to the 80s and the front entry. And then you've got this community room. And in the community room, there is a back piece here that can be converted into a stage. So it's not just a cafeteria that the kids use. It's actually going to have the feel of a nice community space that you would want to utilize. Again, restrooms were added, and that took care of some of the restrooms that we would have needed to remodel in the front of the building, but those have been added to the back. The new main entry, again, there's our secure access point. And so once you come into this front entry, the administration can see who's entering into the front door. They can see back to all of these different hallways, and they would be able to control the access throughout. And it also just brings good conference space for parents that are coming in for meetings. Circulation, I spoke about that before. We have a lot of circulation, so there's more than one way to get around the school, so you're not disrupting other classes. We have remodeled rooms, and this is on the main level. We've brought in the district technology and district maintenance. They have their own outside entrance. We've been looking at remodeling or repurposing, reusing some of the special education space so that it works better for them. And again, those are those 3 classrooms that are undersized. They get split into 2 classrooms, and one is used as a classroom, the other is for special education. We have the new classrooms up here, which are part of the 4th grade. And to summarize what this plan provides is, in the new construction, we have the cafeteria, community room, we have a library, we have a music room, we've added 2 new classrooms, the administrative area is new, and the main entry is new. Under the remodel, we are addressing the 60s wing, which is really not very efficient. There are the additional classrooms, special education, and academic support gets moved around, but so that they're into contiguous pockets, so that that they can be in the right place of the school to serve the best needs for the students. District offices have been brought in. Nurse's office has been brought in into a new location that's closer to the front entry. We've done the structural repairs, and we have the fire sprinklers. And I throw this pie chart in here just to demonstrate that the majority of our effort is going toward learning environments. After all, this is a school, so we would want and expect to see most of the effort going to the learning environments. But we did have, a big chunk of safety and security. We had the remodel and code deficiencies that we had to take care of, and then the site and other district-wide solutions that really make this a good plan. So some of the merits of the building is that it's safe and secure at the main entry. We've added all of those new pieces in the back, the cafeteria, library, music room, and what we call a community room. We've clustered the classrooms and improved the circulation throughout the school. It's now energy efficient. We've achieved, savings for the operating costs. It's code compliant and sprinklered. We have improved the site access. District offices have been consolidated, and it meets the educational standards. And I spoke a little bit about the building efficiency, but we wanted to look and see, okay, how have we actually improved it? If we take just the portables, they cost about $1 per square foot per year to heat and cool, because they have AC out there. The portables are fairly expensive to heat and cool. The existing building is about 50 cents a square foot to heat. After we take away the portables and improve all the thermal envelope, the improvements reduce that to 40 cents a square foot for the entire school. And all of that to say that it's going to be more cost effective or it's going to cost less to heat the school after the building improvements have been done. So even though we are adding more square footage than what's currently there, operating costs in terms of heating have gone down. When we look at the numbers, our budget is $7.4 million. 6.4 of that is what we call hard costs. Those are the construction costs. There's the demolition, there's the new space, there's a renovation, there's site work. Then there's soft costs of $750,000, which are the architectural and engineering fees, project management fees, furniture, furnishings, and equipment, and technology commissioning. So, you know, there's all these other soft things that don't fit into the actual construction cost. And then there's an owner's contingency, which is just extra money put aside for when maybe site conditions aren't what we were able to observe, or we find other structural issues. So $250,000 is set aside for that, giving us a total budget of $7.4 million. And how that breaks down for taxes, because that's really important to you in this community. We have the $7.4 million that all of the costs I'm gonna explain here are based on a 3.04% interest rate. So all of these costs are in there. And we wanted to break it down and look at it in terms of, you know, different people in the community. So if you have a $100,000 home, your impact is going to be $3.91 a month to do this big of a project. If you have a $200,000 home, it's $7.83 a month. Or a $400,000 home, it's $15.66 a month. So it's not a huge impact, but that's what it takes. So for less than $10 a month on a $200,000 home, this is what the school does for you. That concludes my portion of this. I'll be around for questions later.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. And I thought what we'd do, I know Hampstead residents always have questions, so why don't we wait to the end of the presentation before we do questions, if that's okay with everybody. I'd like to recognize Jeff Dowd. He's the business administrator for the school, so he'd like to speak to the bond tonight. You recognize the speak, Jeffrey.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. For those of us who are here, you saw the summary schedule of the bond and the tax impact on the bond. If you look at the back of your finance packet, which is that white packet that says proposed budget, you'll find a full 20-year amortization on that bond. The numbers that are presented do include a 3.04% interest rate. We looked at bonds over a number of different years. 20-year bond was selected for the warrant because it much more closely matches the useful life of this project. In fact, the project was designed to last longer than a 20-year bond cycle. We have taken a different approach in this bond, not only from safety issues that we've pointed out, but in terms of addressing the 4 portables that we have right now. 3, I don't know if you had mentioned that, Greg, the 3 portables at the central school, as well as an additional portable at the middle school. So 5 altogether, 2 at the middle school and 3 at the central school. Those would be gone. So we're taking a much longer view on the project. The portables here are used by staff. You had indicated that we were going to have 2 offices built into the new school. What we were finding was that the current building as it stands right now was designed a number of years ago. We can't anticipate what the learning environment's going to look like and what our classrooms and space needs are going to be a number of years out, but there's enough flexibility built into the plan that hopefully we can get through that period, certainly for the next 20 years. The sphere, as you had pointed out, some of the classrooms with the new library in the back, the classrooms in the middle, can now be returned. The library, where it is right now, will return to classrooms, so we'll have proximity of those classrooms next to each other, small spaces for special education, and a number of other avenues, energy efficiency especially. And if you do speak again, I would love to hear what temperature you got when you tested the wall. I'll be speaking on that. So if there are any questions on the bond, I am available, but that timeframe was selected to spread out the cost and more closely match the anticipated lifespan.
If you have a question, I'm going to ask you to wait till the presentation ends, so it'll be more organized, rather than breaking up the flow of the meeting. I'd like to recognize Paul Pandolina from Trident. And can you please tell us what Trident is and does? Because I don't know, and I want to know.
I'm actually going to steal your podium because I'd like to throw this down. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Thank you, first off, for coming. Appreciate your time. Everybody has a busy schedule. What Trident is and does is basically we get involved with the owners at the inception of projects. You all have gone through, I'm sure, either building a home, doing a renovation, or something in your lifetime where having your own job and trying to manage all that is just overwhelming. Well, you can imagine a school board or an entity like this wanting to undertake a project like this and still do their job educating and being effective. There are so many moving parts and so many things to consider that really are kind of outside the norm that you don't need to go through. So typically we'll get involved early on and we'll put a list of architects together based on what the needs appear to be for the school. Different architects have different strong points and specialties. Once the architects are picked at that point in time, we'll reach out and put together a pool of construction managers. Trident has been in business since 1986, and we get involved not exclusively, but predominantly with school projects. We've been at Merrimack College for years. We handle all of the town of Salem's, New Hampshire's schools and many others. So we sort of have a feel for what builders, again, have that niche and who would be suitable for a project like this. We oversee all of this process so that the owners can sort of focus on what they need to do in their daily educating operations and also express to us what the needs are and be effective and efficient on it. Throughout the project, you know, the beginning, this is the easy part. Once the building starts to get built, Trident really comes into a role where we're reviewing all of the invoices, all of the project schedules. Our job is to keep these projects on time and on budget. No matter how it takes, or what it takes rather, that's what our main role is. And a lot of times the taxpayers are a little bit unsure of, well, you know, are they needed? When you see our record of being able to get projects in on time and under budget, you'll understand that yes, that there is a real value in the end. If we fail at what we do, we wouldn't be here doing it. It's just that simple. I'd like to address a couple things going forward too as far as this project in general. One of the biggest questions that comes at us always is, why do this now? Everybody, even with their own home, you've got a boiler that's giving you a problem, you wait until that thing is gone. You know it's getting there. Everything has a mean life expectancy. This particular building has so many deficiencies over the years that it's time to put some money into it, bring it up to standard. You know, the other thing that's really going on right now in our economy is that if you don't do it this year, we can guarantee you that the cost increase for the same scope next year will be 8 to 12% higher. It's never going to get cheaper. So you do that balance point of when do I push my chips in to do this project? And we feel as though, based on everything that Craig articulated and laid out, that from a programming needs, now really is the time. You as a town also have a huge benefit that you don't have any current bonds that you're paying down. So that really is helpful. There are other towns that we're working in that have just started safety complex programs and have other things going on, sewer rehab. So their tax bill has impact from these other projects. If down the road, if you don't do this now, you may preclude yourself and block yourselves out from being able to do it because you'll have these other issues that pop up. So now is the time to really strike for a lot of reasons. We looked at the bond that had been proposed in the past projects, and they were shorter durations, 10 years. And you say, well, why are we pushing this out to 20 years? A project like of this magnitude will have a life expectancy. You should not have to put money into that building for another 30 to 40 years. So you would want your costs to be commensurate with it. It's a 20-year project life because we want this project to be generationally paid for. You can't put the cost burden on one generation of taxpayers. By spreading it out, your monthly costs really are drastically lower and much more palatable, quite frankly. And in comparison to other projects and other jobs, the 20 years seems to be the sweet spot where people are the most comfortable with it. So if you're asking, why is that part changed, that's the reason for it. Getting back to the surface temperature, when Craig mentioned that, in the summertime or in the warmer months, it's as warm as 95 in there, you say, well, how many days a year is it really all that warm in there? Well, this past little cold snap that we had in January, we took a thermal gun and shot the inside of that 60s wing wall, just the surface temperature. It was 17 degrees. That's just unacceptable. I would not want to have my child in that type of an environment. And there's nothing you can do about it except, insulate it and fix it, and that's just a simple fact. When you improve the infrastructure within a town like this school, you have to understand too that there's an ancillary benefit of all your properties going up. If you let everything fall into a state of disrepair, you're going to have residents that move out because they want the school systems. People come when you have good school systems. Their special eds program is fantastic. If you have to all of a sudden outsource that, your taxes go up. There's a lot that goes into why this building needs this project done. There's also the last issue that I want to address is there have been some comments pertaining to certain things being grandfathered or not grandfathered in, and why do we need to fix these code deficiencies? Code deficiencies are there because simply the word, they're deficient. If they weren't unacceptable, you wouldn't need the grandfather clause. I use an analogy that may be silly, but you can still register and drive a Model A Ford, but would you? And at some point in time, it's not practical. And that is similar to this project and why the time is now, and why that whole grandfather, that's just kind of an excuse for inactivity and to not keep up with the times and let things fall by the wayside. So I kind of wanted to address that. I appreciate your time. I really hope that you folks continue to ask questions and continue to get educated, because I really do believe that if you get all of the facts, good and bad, that you'll come to the decision that there's some benefit in there for every aspect and element of the cross-section of the society and the town. So again, I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Paul. I understand that Barry, or is it Barrett Salter? Got it right? You recognize to speak? Keith, okay, Keith. What's your last? Why don't you come up and speak? And you're with PBNS?
I'm with BPS. Yes, sir.
Can you tell us what that is?
Sure. Do you mind if I borrow your podium? Thank you. There. It's just nice to have a place to put my papers. My name's Keith McBay. I'm president of Bonnet Page and Stone. I have Barrett Salta as our project manager. We are construction managers in New Hampshire, coming up on our 50th year. We build schools, because it's very rewarding and we love it. It's a great way to spend your career, and we have a good time doing it. Tonight, I guess I've been charged with talking a little bit about safety, and should you choose to vote for this project, how a positive bond vote would be implemented with regards to safety. We talked a lot about building safety, but during construction. So we start with what we call a site safety and logistics plan, and that's taking a site plan and working out egress routes during construction, maintaining those, and most importantly, creating a separation between the educational portion for staff and students and visitors and our construction activities. So in all areas, that's a hard separation, whether it's a fence between play areas and construction staging areas, or it could also be a hard petition during renovations to keep those activities separate from both with activity and to keep the noise down and make it less disrupted to the educational space. With that, from there, we go to looking at other items, say the parent drop-off, bus loop, important part, maintaining that, keeping it efficient and effective and safe during construction. From there, we're assuring that we're maintaining life safety throughout the building during construction. So that's your fire alarm, making sure your egresses are correct and like that, and we're working through that process. Maintaining heat, light, and power throughout that effort, through our phasing efforts through the project. And then beyond that, going through background checks on all workers on site, implementing a badge system, and what we're doing there is on every worker's hard hat, there's a number, name of the job, a number, a specific color, and it identifies that person as hard hat 27. So if anybody on site or like that has an issue with that individual, they don't need to know their name. They can go to our job site superintendent that will be there every day, all day, and report a problem should there be any. And beyond that, of course, the simple state law, no smoking, so we're taking care of all those factors on site. So once Barry and I have that program established, we'll sit down with building administration and work through that draft and be sure that it's tailor-made for Hampstead's needs on that site. Reviewing egress and safety with both fire department and police to talk about security throughout the construction process. And then most importantly is staying in constant contact with building administration. So our project managers and our supers are in daily contact with building administration. A school, especially at this grade level, is a dynamic place. There are events and changes coming all the time, and we're sure to stay on that with that constant contact and be sure that we're delivering not only a safe project, but on time and on budget. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you, Keith. The reason I did these mics is so I didn't want discussion to break down, but it's been okay. I'm afraid that at some point, if discussion is between a presenter and someone, a citizen, it becomes an argument between two people, and I just wanted to keep it organized. But we were doing all right. We're doing all right. The next person I want to recognize is Dillard Collins. He's the Central School principal, and I understand he's been in the school for 35 years. Am I correct?
A little bit longer.
A little bit longer.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak to you, the community of Hampstead. I've been up here a few times talking to the town about a bunch of things. As you know, I've been working in the principal's office at the Central School for over 20 years and seen a lot of things change. And the board asked me to address the program needs, what's going on at our school. To begin with, I have to step out front and say that we have a tremendous staff. We've got wonderful teachers, paraeducators, people all over that building, secretaries. You've got a wonderful staff. They do a lot of wonderful things. At the same time, all of those talented educators are challenged with a facility that is good, but not great. So it's time to talk about what are those pieces that can help us go from good to great. It is an older building, built in the phases that you've heard said 3 or 4 different times this evening, so I won't go over that detail again. But there are three problems that I just want you to walk away with tonight thinking about that we need a solution. The first one is that the design is simply, it does not address student safety. There's a lot of problems there that need to be addressed, and the design that's proposed will address that student safety. We simply do not have enough small learning spaces throughout the building. We have problems that need to be addressed. And the last one is enrollment is growing at the time that we need to shut down those portables. Well, how did we get here? The quick and simple answer is it happened, people shown up, and things have changed over the last 30 years since that school had its last brick laid. Things that have changed are pretty significant. Special education became a law that has actually changed the whole way we deliver education to students. And that's only one of them, but there's an awful lot of support services that go along with it that are very important. The success of students. A simple example, a central school, in the early 80s, when I showed up in the Hampstead school system as a teacher, we had one special education teacher at the central school. We now have 5 special education teachers, a reading specialist, a math specialist, a venture specialist, multiple therapists, and support services that are part of what we need to do to deliver 21st century education. Continuing on to the 1990s, the town addressed a lot of things that need to happen. You're standing in a beautiful school. This is a wonderful facility here at the Hampstead Middle School. The building was built with a lot of forethought, and it's actually sustained what this community needs. Later in the 90s, we had this big bubble of growth where everybody started moving into town and families got a little bit bigger. We had a lot of kids showing up at the schools, and I was here when we actually decided we had to put more portables around the schools. On September 11, 2001, a lot of things changed for all of us. Our definition of safety changed. Then after that, we had all these tragic incidents that we only need to mention 2 names, Columbine and Sandy Hook. We have to change our schools because of what happened there. A nice little cute one that happened in March of 2005. You guys said, put in public kindergarten. Again, that changed what's going on in our schools. We have more kids showing up. So here's where we are today. The enrollments have started to grow. And I've watched it from my office staff, and I see a trend. Mrs. Lacasse, Mrs. Boland, and I chuckle about this. Another family walks into the office to register a kid, and then we remember, oh yeah, that was a family that was here about 25 years ago. Their kids got older, they moved out of town, they sold the house, and now we have a child or 2, sometimes 3, moving into that same home. There's not new homes, there's just kids moving into available bedroom space. The net result is that, again, we have more kids in the community in our schools. I can give you a couple of numbers that are important to remember. We had 429 children at the Central School in October of 2016. I just looked a few minutes ago. We have 476 children enrolled at Central School today. NESDEC is saying we're going to look at 500 students in a couple of years. I think those numbers are very real. The administration, staff, and school board made it a priority as well over the years to keep class size at an optimum level. We looked at all the research, the board set in policies, the families supported it, and we've got gains. We've got great students coming out of our schools, and part of that is all of this work. Here's one problem that's developed. My 3rd grade this year, we started the year off with class sizes that were looking good. Our typical 22, 23 was our top end max where we wanted to be. We've now hit 25 in a couple of the classrooms. We're putting too many kids in those rooms. It will work because, again, those great educators make it work. Next year, I look at the numbers for kindergarten, 1st grade, and 3rd grade, and I'm concerned that we may have the same problem occurring there. And the other problem that goes along with this is it's not getting another teacher in because the board has always made sure we have enough teachers. It's that we simply do not have an available classroom. The Central School has ventilation issues that you've heard speaking to this earlier, but I can tell you at least 10 classrooms at the central school that have constant heat, cold, or ventilation issues, and they interrupt learning. Most of those classrooms are in the 1960s wing, which is going to get a nice new wraparound. To keep up with special education and remedial services, we've repurposed a few classrooms over the years, and even the small spaces. As an example, we have a special education teaching space in the back of the library. I have to share a short note from one of the students. She talked to me the other day. She stopped me at lunch. Mr. Collins, can I talk to you about where I have to go till I get some support services? So I said, can you just please write it down? And she wrote me, can we please change the learning center to somewhere else? Because whenever the kids come to the library, it is very noisy, and I would appreciate it. Kids are speaking. There are closets that are now instructional spaces. This is not only a substandard instructional space, but that leaves us with less storage. We're not providing optimum instructional space for occupational and speech therapy services. It's common to see OT working with a child in the hallway. We have 2 speech pathologists that work with students in their office. And it basically, we've got kids on one side of the office getting therapy and kids on the other side of the office getting therapy. That's not optimum. The school board and the administration have been working on a process to close those portables for the students. We closed some of them last year. We're closing more this year. The first and most obvious problem is that those buildings are at their end of life. They are structures that we constantly need to work to maintain. And you saw earlier, they're costing you more money to heat. The most important reason is that we can no longer accept the compromises of student health and safety. Student health is compromised because of those extra trips in and out of the building, in and out of the portable. Student safety in a detached building is simply not as safe as the rest of the school building. And I want to go on the record to say that I'm in 100% agreement with the board to say that this practice must come to an end. The safety of the entrance at the central school is a problem waiting to happen. We have many cameras and automated locks in place, but that's not enough. As an example, the access to the gym and the cafeteria are easy targets for someone with ill intent. Fortunately, Central School has an amazing staff with teachers, paraeducators, and administrators that are going to work to solve these challenges. It's a consensus amongst all of those Central School educators that it's time to find a more permanent solution. This new proposal does that. It relocates the main point of entry. The school will have a more efficient supervision of that point of entry. The second point of entry will also have a similar level of security. If you didn't notice it, that's the library. For some parents, that's the car loop. The educational space design will meet the needs of the students and will significantly improve the academic support services for students. With this design, there are a number of improvements that will purposely take care of student instruction in many ways. And the number of core classrooms will address the class size issues by simply adding a few more classrooms. Please consider the proposal as a means to address the needs of Hampstead children, not just this year, but for many years to come. After 30 years, it's time to repair, renovate, and renew Central School. Thank you.
Thank you, Dillard. Karen, is there anybody else from the school committee or the administration that wants to speak?
No, Mr. Moderator. I'd like to open up for questions for the floor, please.
Okay, and I just would remember the people that were talking about Article 2, the bond issue, Hampstead Central School repair, renovation, and renewal project. So if anybody wants to discuss this, I'd ask you to go to the microphone and to identify yourself.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Kelly Seawalt. I have been a resident of Hampstead for the last 26 years. Big anxiety speaking in public, but I think it's worth coming up here to talk about warrant Article 2. I speak first from the perspective of the resident, taxpayer, parent of adult children who have now graduated from this amazing school system. At 26 years of age, getting married, thinking, where are we going to go? Well, our first and foremost is, I want a school system that's amazing. Well, we found it. That was after a lot of research. So fast forward 26 years. and our kids no longer go to the school system. But we pay our taxes, obviously, for legal reasons, but also because we want our, required by law, but when we need to sell our home, we want to start our next chapter, we want to be able to sell our home. And the people that we're going to sell it to are not people my age, 50 and older, because they're not flocking to Hampstead. The people that are flocking to Hampstead are the ones with children that want, again, the great school system. And right now, it just feels like we've been Band-Aiding a lot of stuff for a long time. And I feel like my tax dollars are being wasted with temporary fixes, out-of-date and unsafe structures. And I understand that as you get older and you retire, you've worked hard. You really want to enjoy your money that you worked for. And I can't see a problem with maybe contributing less and some people contributing more. I'd be on board to pay more. But I also want to speak to you in another role as a paraprofessional that I've been with the school system since 2008. I'm in the school every day, Monday through Friday, and I can surely attest to you that since the last article to remodel the school failed, we have definitely not conveniently found extra new space, as was reported to the Carriagetown News editor. In fact, we're currently using closet space, as Mr. Collins said, to give additional instruction. Many times, even today, I went to use the said closet to teach, and it was already in use. I had to search the school for a place to teach my student. And a colleague of mine, same thing happened with her. She had to go and do instruction on the second floor hallway. In addition, when I'm in that so-called closet, it's not insulated. It's in that 60s wing. So I have a student who has started to bring her coat to learn so that she can be comfortable and be on task. The library, as I said, has been partitioned by a movable 3/4 wall to teach our students that may need help due to learning challenges, hearing impairments, and attention issues. Meanwhile, the noise in the library with classes being in there has many special education students, as one wrote to Dillard, asking to go learn somewhere else because they can't hear. It's too distracting. Sorry, I lost my page. Not to mention, some kids are shy about getting extra help, maybe embarrassed, and putting them in a wall, like a movable wall where people can peek through, maybe not optimum for them. In closing, all I ask is not to take my word for it, not to take the words of others coming forward with spreadsheet figures that may cause you a lot of confusion or may be outdated. Before you go to the voting ballot, please, please, please tour our school. See for yourself what is truly needed to invest your tax dollars in this project. In order to make a full, informed decision, do your due diligence and have all your questions answered by the school board, the architect firm, and see things for yourself. Tours are available. Ask the questions you want answered. Thank you for your time and consideration. Vote fully informed.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Moderator. My name is Al Cipriano. I'm a 38-year resident of Hampstead. And first, before I ask my question, I would like to thank the principal for his presentation. I think the community was waiting to hear from our leader at the Central School, and we really appreciate his comments this evening. My question evolves around the community center. My concern is, will there be any time limits on using it? In other words, if you wanted to use the community center, will there be a program in place where someone controls who can use it, when they can use it, what the rules are? Will that come from the school board? Where will that come from?
Karen, does someone want to answer that question for Mr. Cipriano?
I'd like Mr. Collins to answer that, please.
Okay.
Short answer is we already have it in place. Right now, we have a system in place that somebody contacts our office if there's a community event. They see one of the secretaries in the office. Everybody knows Mrs. Boland. She'll take care of making sure that someone can get a room on a Saturday or a Sunday or an evening. Cub Scouts are there all the time. Boy Scouts are there. With this additional space, we'll have a lot more flexibility. In fact, I hope, it probably won't still be around in a few more years, but I hope that cafeteria has some events that I can come in as a senior citizen or retired educator to see it happen with those kids.
Thank you. I have one more question,
Okay,
if I'm allowed to.
For Mr. Collins, or what's
No,
your, why don't you ask the
for
question first, so they can,
Okay. The question involves, and I've asked this question before, and I just want the rest of the public to hear it in case they weren't listening the last time or whatever. It involves, during the construction process, I'm concerned about the issue of asbestos. Is there any, once they start the construction, if they find any asbestos in the building, if they do, will that add additional costs to this original budget?
Karen, if someone can answer that question?
Yeah, Mr. Jones, please, will you answer that?
Yeah, thank you for the question. All of the asbestos has been taken out of the school. There are reports that they went through and removed everything. Could there be a possibility of finding some somewhere? Not likely. If it were to be found, that's what our contingency money is for. So, does that answer?
Yep, thank you.
Anybody else want to speak to Article 2, the bond issue? You recognize to speak, ma'am.
Hi, Suzanne Finicaro, Hampstead resident for almost 20 years. Our family's only going to have kids in the school system for about 3 more years, but we believe strongly in investing in a long-term improvement for our school, our children, and the staff. Some residents have continually argued that our town doesn't need many of these changes that are being proposed because the building is grandfathered by code. But do we want our youngest of students and our staff dealing with these issues that are obsolete code? I loved that this new project looks at the building holistically, and the project didn't just try to add some additional space. The plan appears to really have looked at how the school should function and flow, strategically placing like functional areas together. Another one is the removal of all the district portables, including the ones here at HMS. Security for all students and staff are dramatically improved, and this has been a concern for many of us parents for a very long time. The town benefits greatly from those new community spaces, and I'm really happy that the board selected to do this with a 20-year bond to help minimize the tax burden. So I thank you for that. And I hope more residents are going to come out and vote, and I hope you're going to vote yes for this.
Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else want to talk about the bond, Hampstead Central School? You recognize to speak, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Linda Milley, and I'm a senior in the town of Hampstead, and have lived here with my husband for 12 years in a 55-plus community. Obviously, I have no children in the school system. Again, I'd like to thank the principal of the Central School for speaking. I was very appreciative to hear the comments that he made specifically about the school. I have not yet been into the Central School, but certainly will be taking the tour and checking that out for myself. After reviewing the current proposed renovation plans for the school and talking with the development team at the recent info session sponsored by the Hampstead Library, I developed a more keen interest in the renovation project. I have just a few comments and questions tonight. Some of them have already been addressed. I'm a big proponent of education and feel a more thorough understanding of the project will be beneficial as I consider my decision when casting the warrant vote. And I believe that this kind of program is going to be beneficial for everyone in town. I'm particularly interested in the senior community, and I understand that there's been a lot of thought given into what the seniors can do in the school, and it's my understanding that there's an invitation out inviting the seniors to attend a program at the school on February 19th. And I think that a day meeting is a great idea because people like to go out during the day rather than at night, especially seniors. And am I correct that this meeting is to take place at the school from 1:30 to 1:30 to 3 o'clock, and that tours of the school may be available? And can we speak a little bit more about what kind of options would be available for the community, seniors, and other to happen at the school?
Karen, someone want to address that?
First, I'd like to answer your question. Thank you for your comments very much. And I'd like to answer your question. The coffee for seniors, you're correct. It's Monday, February 19th from 1:30 to 2:30 in the Hampstead Central School. Light refreshments will be served. It's an early release day, so there should be more ample parking available. And as you noted, it is during the day, so I think that's helpful for many people who would rather not attend an evening meeting. During that time, tours will also be available. As far as other tours go, there is one this Thursday evening from 4 o'clock to 8 o'clock in the evening. Members of the construction team will be there also. It's for people who can't make it during the day. They might not get home from work until 6:37 at night. They can still come over and have a full hour to tour the school. The final tour will be given on Saturday, March 10th, 3 days before the vote. It's a Saturday from 11 o'clock to 2 o'clock. The
Okay.
same thing, construction team and administrators will be available to answer questions. In addition to that, Principal Collins has been very flexible. If someone cannot make those designated dates, you can call him and he will arrange for a tour for you when it is convenient, even if it is during school. I think that's important for people to understand.
Okay, thank you. I have just a couple of other questions.
Stay on Article 2 now, okay? That's what-
sorry?
Stay on Article 2, that's what we're talking about, okay?
will
It's just
state-
straying a little bit,
Will
yeah.
state aid be available for the cost? Is there anticipated any state aid?
Everyone from the school, Jeffrey Dow, do you want to address that?
That's a complicated question. We aren't anticipating state aid. However, there is going to be a number of existing bonds that are going to be getting paid off through the state system, and as a result of that, there has been some speculation there may be more funding available at that time. We are not relying on that funding to be a part of this project. However, the timing does line up with the expiration of a number of bonds that the state's currently working through. So certainly, if there were any opportunities for state aid, we're not anticipating them, but certainly if there were any opportunities, we would be applying for those.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Anybody else want to be heard? Joe Guthrie, our selectman and state rep.
You didn't have to stay rep, Mr.
Okay.
Moderator. After what Jeff said, I'm looking to kind of hide where there isn't any money available. And I apologize for that. But I really have two hats on tonight. One of which first I'd like to say that back in the day, back in 1970s, I was sitting where the school committee is sitting now in North Andover, and we were building schools. So you have my support and my sympathy, and thanks for all the work you and your staff has done. I think it's been a great job, and I think you got a good proposal together. The first hat I'd like to talk about is the hat that I wear as a taxpayer, and I think that's probably one of the biggest concerns we have in the town. Question is, can we afford it? I happen to think we can't afford not to do it. If we wait, it's going to cost us more money. It has to be done. I think Mr. Collins would not disagree with me if I said he's doing one hell of a job under a real adverse conditions in that school. I'm taking the tour like many of us have taken it. That plus the kindergartens that were put in there and the special ed that the state can take credit or blame for, depending on how you feel about it. You've done a great job considering what you've had to contend with. So I happen to think that the project should go forward. And I wish that we were back at the old town meeting when everybody was here that was going to vote. And I hope that there's enough out in TV, and I wish more had come out tonight. Kind of disappointed. I always am. I'm kind of old-fashioned. We should go back to the old town meeting. But having said that, my other hat is I'm excited, and I'm have to tell Mr. Collins you're going to be challenged. For me, if I'm still around, and if not, I'm not, I'm quite sure from whoever is sitting on the Board of Selectmen with that facility you're going to have, hopefully you're going to have. Because I can see there's a real need, as you've heard from previous speakers. We're being challenged, both in the town and state level, for our seniors. They're looking for programs, particularly right now we already got an ad hoc committee made up by our recreation committee and some other citizens. I happen to be on that committee trying to find out what the needs are in Hampstead. We don't have any place for programs. We're using the library on a Thursday morning for a coffee clutch. And we do have some programs at Vic Gary, but some people can't get there. But anyway, the short story is we're being challenged at the town level, and we need, and we're going to be looking to challenge the Principal Collins, whether it's here or is the next principal we have. We need this kind of a facility. I'm still get nervous every time I hear somebody say 7 million, 7.5 million. That gets me kind of nervous. But when I look, I'm retired, I'm on a fixed income. I happen to be lucky. I live in Emerson Village, where the value of my home is not much, and I can, the $50 a year was going to probably cost me. That's half of what the state pays me for being a state rep, and I don't mind paying it.
Thank you, Joe. Please state your name, ma'am.
Laura Ryan, and I am one of those children that had Mr. Collins as a teacher and chose to come back to town. Mainly, my husband and I made the decision because of the school system. I just have a quick question that I don't think it's been talked about yet, what the timeline is for the project to completion.
Who's going to answer that? Okay. Mr. Pandolina.
With a successful bond vote, we would start construction immediately thereafter, removing the portables. There are things that we can get going on while final design plans are being prepared and done so that we can actually put this out to competitive bid. One of the things it just popped in my head as I say competitive bid, we had a contractors reach out this past week trying to reach out to local contractors. We really do want to get a lot of, give everybody an opportunity to bid on the sub-trades and so forth. This project would conclude in the fall of 2019.
Anybody else want to be heard? Recognize? Well, let everybody speak who hasn't spoken yet. Go ahead,
Hi.
Lori.
Lori Warnock, resident of Hampstead for the past 28-ish kind of years. Point of clarification on the fire code. The building, as it currently stands, does pass fire inspection every year. The fire department texted me as I was sitting there to remind me that that passes every year. And it is, in fact, grandfathered under the sprinkler code. The new sections would require sprinkler, and it would be a great opportunity to add sprinkler to additional parts of the building. So it does, in fact, pass its fire inspections. Otherwise, they wouldn't be letting those little monkeys in there. So we're good. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. You want to speak to the sprinklers? Yes. Okay, I'll let Mr. Pandolina speak, then you're next, Mr. Cipriano, okay?
Yep, this will be brief. With respect to the sprinkler system, there was a cost analysis done that said, okay, yes, if we build a new addition, we will need to sprinkler it. Once you touch over 50% project value of the building, you then now have to make the entire building up to today's code compliance. There are two ways that we could do that. You could either build firewalls from the existing that separate the existing building from the new additions, or sprinkler the entire facility. Believe it or not, the cost analysis for building the firewalls is actually more than sprinklering the entire building. So rather, the choice was made for the new design to sprinkler the entire building. So I just want the residents and everybody to know that that analysis was done, and there are some triggers that occur when you go from something that's grandfathered into now needing to meet today's codes. Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Cipriano.
One additional question I had is completion date. Will there be any penalties incorporated in any agreement in terms of the completion date, failure to complete? I don't know who can answer that.
Look toward Karen.
That should be
Mr.
you,
Pandolini is going to answer that.
our owner's project manager.
In all honesty, typically there are, in a project like this, there aren't liquidated damages built into these contracts, nor are there incentive clauses. Part of putting together the design team is bringing contractors and architects to the table that have a track history in meeting. This is not something new. For instance, we're currently working on a project in Hampton, New Hampshire. Bonnet Page and Stone is also the contractor there. Because of some of the weather constraints and so forth, we're actually on our schedule that gets updated literally every week. We're projecting being behind by a couple of weeks because of that extreme cold and when we were hanging steel. They know they will make the modifications, that there are other concurrencies that can occur during the project to catch up and make up time. So whether it be adding crews, additional shifts, the answer is no, we don't have penalties, and no, we don't need them, because one way or another, they know they've got to get it done, and we haven't missed one yet.
Will there be any, one more question?
Sure.
And you could probably answer it.
Absolutely.
Will there be any priority given to local construction companies that want to bid on this particular project?
Yeah, absolutely. As I mentioned earlier, that we put out, I think we sent out some 98 or so emails to local contractors to come this past week to meet with us, to see the scope, to find out what interest they may or may not have in the project. When hopefully we have a successful vote, that outreach will occur again. And as the drawings are completed and the various packages are complete for bidding, absolutely. From a priority standpoint of view, no. We have a fiduciary responsibility to come in with the lowest, best qualified number. But the local folks will be invited. This is not going to be something where we're pulling contractors from Timbuktu to come in. We want the local community to have every opportunity to be involved in this. It benefits everybody.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Does anybody else here want to be heard? I recognize another selectman, Mr. Murphy.
Sean Murphy, Wheelwright Road. I just have a few questions that I might have missed during your presentation. So you said there's cost savings from efficiencies, improved efficiencies. Have you annualized those numbers? So you said it was like $1 to heat the portables, and then it would bring it down to like 40 cents. So I was just wondering what the annualized cost savings would be with the improved efficiencies.
So in terms of exactly how much that cost savings would be?
Yes.
Yeah, and we have the full numbers of what it costs, and I apologize, I don't have that here with me tonight, what it is currently. But when we took the square footage of what needed to be heated and projected how much savings there would be by the energy efficiency that's been built into that, it was actually less to heat the building with the new design than it currently is.
Yeah, no, I
So
was
there's
just
a cost
curious because
savings.
it might help, in terms of, we're asking you to put forth so much in extra tax dollars to build this, but we're going to actually see, cost savings down the road from energy efficiencies, and that's going to equate to roughly, it's an approximation of, whatever X amount of dollars.
Yeah, and
That'd be nice information
Right.
to have.
right.
So the other question I had was, will the new building, after all is said and done, be air-conditioned?
The way we have this planned is that not every location's gonna be air-conditioned. So typically what we do in a scenario like this is we air-condition administrative areas, certain other areas that would need that as, maybe they have a southern exposure that's more extreme. But what is built into the system is a dehumidification system. So it gives you that feeling of being air conditioned, but it's not the cost implications of air conditioning every space.
Okay.
And this is kind of standard of what schools are doing in our area.
Okay. And I only have 2 more questions, so I apologize. During construction, how are the kids going to be sort of moved around and to sort of accommodate the construction? I don't know if that was sort of talked about during your presentation, and you might need a few minutes for that. And then maybe the layup question is in terms of background checks for construction workers, those being done by maybe BPS or like Corey checks, or, yeah, if you
Right,
could
right.
Corey's
maybe talk a little bit
Massachusetts.
about that.
Sean,
You
you
wanna-
did kind of miss that, but we'll ask Keith to come up and
I
do it
I
again.
appreciate it. Thanks.
No one's going to do a Cory check in New Hampshire. That's Massachusetts.
So first question with access to the building. We've got that plan roughed out. We'll be working with building administration and fire to get that, get the entry done off the bus loop. Also, what we're concerned about is as you can see, that admin addition is right at the current main entrance. So we'll be working some emergency egress only there, also out the rear of the 60s wing. So we'll be coordinating that with local safety officials to be sure that we're getting efficient access in and maintaining emergency there. Background checks, we typically will piggyback on top of the schools program and do that through the state police in New Hampshire. Does that answer?
No, it does.
Okay.
Anybody else want to discuss the bond issue? Hampstead Central School Repair, Renovation, Renewal Project, 20-year bond. You recognize the speak, ma'am.
Linda Milley, speaking once more. I'd like to have some clarification again on how the bidder is selected, whether it in fact is the lowest bidder. Can someone speak to that?
Mr. Pandolini recognized to speak to that.
The bidding process, as the architectural plans are completed, there will be various packages that will go out, whether it be foundation and site work, whether it would be HVAC, electrical, and so forth. Bonnet, Page, and Stone ultimately calls the ball on that, but this is where Trident comes in, and we all sit down as a collaborative team and say, okay, who's the most qualified? What's your work history? We can't just have a 1 or 2 man electrical company come in and bid on something that just may, quite frankly, be beyond their means. So it's not a simple question. It will go to the lowest qualified bidder, and the key there is qualifications. Again, it's a collaboration between the architect, the construction manager, the owners, and us at Trident to oversee and sort of guide that. But if you're qualified and you have the low bidder, you will have the project. It's the fiduciary responsibility to go with the low bidder as long as they're qualified.
Anybody else want to speak to the bond? This gentleman you recognize to speak, sir.
Hi, good evening. Al Davis from Hampstead. I just have a question about if there's a power outage, is there a generator going to be installed in case there's an outage during the day or during the evening?
Craig, you going to answer that?
I honestly, I can't remember at this point in time if there's currently the generator that is in the back of the school, and that will be in place. I don't know that we need to add another generator. That part hasn't been analyzed. But yes, we have one so that, you know, it will be hooked up to the school, and typically what they do is they route that to the areas that need it the most. Yeah.
Anybody else want to speak to the bond? This was
Moderator.
Go ahead, Jason.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Jason Cipriano, I live on Laura Lane, member of the board, and been a resident of the town for roughly 38 years now. We've been talking about this article in one form or another since I've been on the board, and as Karen pointed out, the town has been discussing the need for this kind of work now for 13 years. We're now well into our second decade of discussing the need for this kind of work. And we've gone through a number of different consultants and architects and support personnel who all have come back virtually the same conclusion, that this work is absolutely necessary for a lot of different reasons. The board has endeavored to try to bring forward proposals that we think make sense, proposals that we think are reasonable for the taxpayers. We're taxpayers as well here on the board, and as we evaluate these things, we evaluate them as well. We've now heard from our educators, we've heard from our construction folks and project management team. I think it's worth hearing, you know, if you know, for one more time at least, from the board, and hearing a few things said very plainly and very bluntly, because we have been talking about this for so long. The truth is that we on this board, obviously speaking for myself, but I'm confident that we probably largely feel the same way. We have failed you. To the students and the staff in that building, we have failed you. This town has and this board has. You deserve adequate educational spaces. We gave you closets. You deserve fire protection and sprinklers. We gave you an escape route. You deserve a secure building. We gave you key fobs and the hope that visitors stay on their path. To the taxpayers of Hampstead, we have failed you. You deserve smart spending. We gave you budgeted line items on portables with no residual value that require increasing maintenance each and every year that they sit in our lots. We gave you budgeted line items on heat for a wing of the building with virtually no insulation that bleeds your money out every day it's cold. You deserve value for your tax dollars. We gave you students educated in suboptimal spaces and class sizes over our maximum limits that will have an impact on educational quality. You deserve better. We deserve better. The price is not going to go down. The price is going to go up. And consistently we recognize that there is a need. But for once, we need to acknowledge, particularly for our students and our staff, that we are sorry because we have failed you. There are problems in that building that everybody knows needs to be addressed. Now is the time to address them. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Anybody else want to discuss the warrant article that deals with the bond for Central School? Seeing nobody rising to speak, I suggest that Article 2, the bond issue, is hereby forwarded to the March 13th ballot. So we're going to go on to the next article.
Excuse me, Mr. Moderator.
Yes?
I'd like to move that we restrict reconsideration on Article 2.
The second of that?
I'll second.
Okay, we'll do a voice vote on this, okay? I'll do yeas and nays. If I can tell what it is, then that'll be it. All those in favor of a, what's the title of your motion again?
Restrict reconsideration on Article 2.
Motion to restrict, what she's trying to do, so you understand, she doesn't want someone to come back later on in the meeting and to reopen this issue. We've debated, we've talked about it, and so we can't come back to this now. I do think the bond, though, if it doesn't pass, we have to have another meeting. I don't think somebody can do it that way. There's a statute on this, but we'll go ahead. So motion to restrict reconsideration. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those say no signify by saying nay. No nays, the ayes have it. That's an obvious vote. If we do votes, what I'll do is, if I can't tell what the vote is, we'll do a hand vote, okay? and hopefully you don't have to go to a secret ballot, but that's our last recourse if I can't tell what the vote is. Someone has to request for a secret ballot. To have a secret ballot, we need, prior to a vote, 5 people have to request in writing, registered voters, for a secret ballot. But no one's done that, and I hope they won't, because it's really cumbersome for the rest of the meeting. Okay, so we're going to go on to Article 3. Article 3 is the operating budget. Shall the voters of the Hampstead School District raise and appropriate an operating budget, not including appropriations by special warrant articles and other appropriations voted separately, the amount set forth on the budget posted with the warrant, for the purposes set forth therein, totaling $26,735,997. Should this article be defeated, the operating budget shall be $26,724,114, which is the same as last year, with certain adjustments required by previous action of the Hampstead School District or by law. Or the governing body may hold one special meeting in accordance with RSA 40:13, Roman numeral 10, and Roman numeral 16, to make up the issue of a revised operating budget only. There's a note here, warrant Article 3 operating budget does not include appropriations proposed on any other warrant articles. Now, this when we go to a secret ballot, all that's required is a majority vote, not the supermajority. And this is recommended by the school board. Help me, what's 500? What's the third zero for?
No abstentions.
Oh, no abstentions, okay. So it's 5 unanimous vote recommended by the school board. So we move this article forward. Somebody move this forward for discussion?
So moved.
I'll second.
Second, okay. Does anybody want to speak to the operating budget? Usually someone on the school committee. Jason Cipriano, you recognize to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Okay.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I have a presentation on the budget. I hope to inform the voters of the town of Hampstead how we came up with the budget. I'm going to highlight what are the key drivers of our budget, some of the distribution, and hopefully inform you as to our school budget. So let's talk about the key budget drivers first. Key budget drivers: insurance rate GMR increase of 6.8%. GMR stands for the Guaranteed Maximum Rate from Health Trust. It's the increase in our medical insurance. So that's set for us annually, and this year it's an increase of 6.8%. We are seeing a district enrollment projected to increase by 19 students. That's been talked about a few times this evening, but it's worth repeating, and I'll have a slide later on that shows you enrollment by school. There's a pervasive rumor that's been out there for a little while that our district is shrinking. That is absolutely not true. Our district is growing and is projected to continue to grow in the foreseeable future. All right. Special education tuition, transportation services have all increased due to changing student needs. Technology infrastructure projects that have been recommended as the result of an independent review that the board commissioned earlier this year. In our curriculum cycle, for those unfamiliar with it, we alternate the curriculum cycle so that we were not updating all of our textbooks at the same time. So this time around, we're updating our science textbooks. So we kind of rotate that. That way the taxpayers don't have to absorb an entirely new curriculum across the entire school district all at once. We kind of spread that out. Okay. Let me talk about projected enrollment. At the central school, we're looking at a projected enrollment of 489 pre-K through 4. That's up 24 students. At the middle school, we're projecting a decrease of 16 students in grades 5 through 8, projecting 399 students. And at Pinkerton, we're projecting an increase of 11 students, grades 9 through 12, 449 students. There are, of note, within Pinkerton, there's 443 regular tuition students and additional students, 6 students who are ungraded, depending on the specialized programs that they're in at Pinkerton. We budgeted for 443 regular tuition at $12,065.85, and special education is budgeted for the ungraded students. The total district-wide enrollment is projected to be 1,337, or an increase of 19 students, roughly 1%. You can see now, as we look at the projections, the enrollment projections, this is what we were talking about earlier. So we're right here. we are coming out of sort of a lull period where we're moving into a growth period within the district. And again, no one's suggesting that we're seeing massive growth, just that we are seeing some growth. And we will continue, or we expect to continue to see some growth throughout the district. One thing that we talk about a lot on the board, if you watch some of our meetings and we do the budget preparation, is we are sensitive to the fact that there are numerous residents in town who are on a fixed income. And one of the things that we look at annually as we prepare our budget and the overall increase in our budget is how it will affect all residents, not just those residents who are working full-time, maybe have multiple incomes, but as well as our seniors who may be on a fixed income. So it's important to note that since 2000, the average Social Security Administration increase is 2.2%. Over that time period, over that same time period, the average increase in the school district budget is about 1.86%. In other words, on average, since the new millennia, our school district has increased its budget less than the average increase for those on a fixed income. Now again, year to year, it can vary depending on the amounts that's set. Social Security for this year, 2018, is 2%, and you'll see the school district budget is tracking along roughly with that as well. So we do try to take that into account as we budget. One of the key budget impactors for us in our school district, and this hits the town as well, is the contributions to the New Hampshire retirement system. The New Hampshire retirement system, as an employer, we have to contribute into the retirement system for all of our employees. I put this chart up to show you what has happened over time, and I don't show you the year, every year, but just to show you what has happened over time. In 1977, the state contributed roughly 35% to the retirement system. By 2010, that was down to 30%. By 2012, it was just over 3%. This year, we're projecting 0%. There was a bill in the House, there was a bill, I don't know what the status of it was, or is, but there was a bill to increase that to 15%, but as far as I know, that hasn't happened. So we expect 0% contribution from the state. The practical reality of this is that that cost still has to be paid. So whereas the state was in 1977 contributing 35%, now contributes 0%, that is made up by our district. So that difference gets made up by the local taxpayers as opposed to the state. The significance here as we budget is that annually, in some years since I've been on the board, we have seen double-digit increases year over year in the contributions to the retirement system that we have to pay as a district. And yet we've kept our school budget, district budget, at or below 2%, which means that that money has to come from somewhere else. Right? If your contributions are increasing at 10 or 11%, but your overall budget is only increasing at 2%, that difference has to come from somewhere else, often from programming. So you can see here as well, this is another chart that shows it over time for the contributions that we've been making. This is the contributions that our school district have been making for our teachers over time. You can see up until about the early 90s, it was relatively low and even decreasing, and then massive increases over time. So that's what we've been looking at as we look at the retirement system. Source, by the way, I apologize, I should have cited my sources. My source for that comes from the New Hampshire retirement system and the New Hampshire Municipal Association. Staffing budget changes. So our staffing levels as we go into the next school year remain generally unchanged. There may be some reassignments that occur based on final enrollments. We're always moving around folks as we get final enrollment numbers, and that we also have what we call bubble grade years, where we may have a class that is really large followed by a class that is really small comparatively. And so we may move a teacher up with that larger size class as they move up if there's not enough students in the year behind to justify keeping the number of classes in the year behind at those levels. We have budgeted a 3% increase for all non-union staff, and all union staff costs are based on current contracts that were just approved by the voters of Hampstead. So we are operating on our just newly approved union contracts, and so those costs are built in. Salary changes, that's an increase. We have an increase of $16,950 or 0.002% increase. Benefit changes, this is where we get our most significant change, $257,152 or 5.2% increase. And then some changes happen because of change in participation of the various plans. We offer different health plans to our employees, so it does depend on who enrolls in which plan. And as we get different enrollments, if an employee without dependents leaves the district, and let's say we hire someone that has dependents, that'll change the health plan or potentially change the health plan that they're enrolled in. More specifically on district staffing, you can see our budgeted FTEs or full-time equivalents. 2017-18, we budgeted 191.8 FTEs. For 2018-19, 189.4 are budgeted. And we like to point out that 86% of our staff have their master's degree or above. We have a very competent, very well-educated staff that does a fantastic job. We did add some extra days to make up some part-time, to move some part-time staff to full-time. That included preschool, speech and language, some HCS speech and language, occupational therapist. We also added some stipends for special education staff who chair special ed teams at the schools. That amounted to $7,500. And we moved a technology assistant from part-time to full-time. That was in support of the recommendations that came from the audit, the independent audit that we had of our technology department. One of the recommendations was to adjust the staffing, and so the board took that into consideration. There is a slight reduction in the total FTEs, you can see there. During the budget building, we did take out 2 full-time positions that were included in the 2017 budget. It's important to note as well that during the budget process, there were some additional positions that were proposed, but were held off to be considered in the next year by the next school board. That included a district social worker, a librarian, so that each school would have their own. Right now we have a single librarian that moves between the schools, a math specialist for the central school, a special ed teacher at the central school, and an extra nurse sub days. This is a breakout of our budget increase by function. When we do our budgeting, again, if you come to our budgeting workshops or if you follow the board as it goes through the budgeting process, we do it by function so you get a better sense of where the money specifically is. So as we look at our budget increase, 2018-2019 budget increase of 2.26%. You'll recall, going back to what I said earlier, we do try to stay right around that 2% mark as best that we can. Regular education, special education, so you'll see specifically by function where some of those costs are coming from. The net difference is an increase of $590,874. This is the overall budget proposal that the moderator read as part of the warrant article. You can see the current budget, the proposed budget, and the difference that I just mentioned, $590,874, or a 2.26% increase year over year. And for our funding sources, you'll see our funding sources here. The predominant funding source is local taxes. Of the $26 million in anticipated fiscal 19, $22.18 million come from local taxes. You'll see there's a small amount in surplus, state adequacy aid, and other revenue. The tax impact per $1,000 in assessed property value for the anticipated fiscal 19 is $1.03. Next, I would call your attention to the budget distribution. Again, not always the most glamorous slides as we flip through these things and talk about our budget, but it's important to note that the majority of the costs that the district incurs are non-discretionary. They are set. So for instance, salaries, the salary structure is set in the union contract that was agreed upon by the school board and the unions and was approved by the voters. Benefits, I talked about the guaranteed maximum rate and so forth. Those benefits are structured and outlined in the union contracts, so they're largely non-discretionary. Other costs that we have in there that are generally non-discretionary include things like tuition cost. Tuition cost for Pinkerton is set by Pinkerton Academy and is a function of the number of students that we send to Pinkerton. In other words, Hampstead does not get to dictate the tuition that we pay to Pinkerton. Pinkerton sets their tuition cost. We tuition our students in based on the number of students that we have. That's how much we pay. Taking that into account, there's a relatively small amount of money that's left over for discretionary purchases, things like some additional office supplies or some equipment that we might need outside of what we have a planned replacement for. And the default budget is $26,724,114. That is $11,883 less than the proposed budget. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you, Mr. Cipriano. Anybody else from the board want to speak to the operating budget? Anybody want to discuss or debate the operating budget? Any questions out there? Oh, go ahead, sir. I'll get you next, Mr. Murphy, okay? Please state your name and where you live.
Sorry, John.
Well, you both got up at the same time.
I was closer.
Okay.
My name is Bill Leary. I've been a resident of Hampstead for 12 years and live in a plus 55 community where just about everybody is on a fixed income. Now, in a newspaper article a short time ago, Jason, you mentioned that you took into considerations in the budget that the effect that it has on senior citizens and people on fixed incomes. But if you look at it, $590,000 is a lot of money. And based on your budget proposal that you've handed out, that comparing 2016 to 2018, the budget increase appears to be $2,238,000. And just from the people that live in my development, we've had a number of people have moved out because of the taxes. In the last several years, our taxes have gone from $4,000 a year to $6,000 a year. And what benefit is there to us as senior citizens? It just makes it harder to live here when we have the option of moving to Florida or someplace where the taxes are $1,000 or $2,000 a year. So I just wanted to express the concern that the senior citizens have about the increases in the budget. Thank you.
Okay. You don't have to answer that, Jason, unless you want to.
No, I would just make a couple of comments. I would just reiterate that absolutely, your sentiment is one that has been expressed to this board and to individual members before, and I did try to highlight, and I do appreciate, within any one particular year, there may be a significant budget increase. Although this year it's 2.26%. In any one year, it may be more than other years. But as I said before, since the new millennia, we have tracked along with Social Security and tried to stay very closely, even as we've approved new union contracts and done some other things, initiated a one-to-one technology program at the school that we're very proud of. There are a number of projects that the board has delayed that we have put off from a maintenance perspective and from other upgrades in other areas of the school, as well as programs that we have deferred over a number of years and that we continue to defer to be sensitive to the tax impact. As I said before as well, some of the greatest impact to us in terms of the cost increase in the district are some things that we don't have control over. That includes adequacy aid and other aid that's available from the state, and as that decreases, then our costs to replace that increase, as well as our contributions to the retirement system, which over the last few years have included double-digit increases. And that's a function of the state decisions that are made in Concord that we on the board have to live with. So, but I am sensitive to your concerns.
Mr. Murphy, you want to speak?
So I just had a question on a line item. It's line item 210, group insurance. So the budget for 17 is 3.3 million. I'm just going to use round numbers. And then the proposed for 2019 is 2.9. Is that due to an anticipation of staff reduction?
No, if I may.
Go ahead, Mr. Dowd.
Moderator, Ms. Murphy, we did just become aware of that line item, and I'm not sure why it's in there as a negative. So I'm gonna have to look into that, because the overall insurance expense is not down by that amount.
Right, 'cause the previous slide of one of the drivers is there was an increase of insurance, the rate of insurance, right?
That's correct,
Like
yeah.
6.8,
Yep.
roughly?
Yeah. So you'll see that the budget on that 2,900, 210 line, 17-18 budget, 2,750,000 versus the proposed 2,922,000. So it is an increase. And I'm not certain, I'm gonna have to double check, and we'll post what that corrected number is on that
Okay.
lead sheet under major factors.
The other question in relation to that line is in terms of the calculation and how you come to that number. So is that based off of actual participation, given, a contingency based off people, having life events of, having a child or getting married? Or is it based off of a total family plan participation for every single employee?
Absolutely not based on family plan participation for every employee. It is based on a factor, as you initially suggested.
So it
which
is based off of actual participation with a contingency of changes?
Of changes, of unknowns, of employees perhaps coming on,
Right.
leaving, and, being employed and bringing on some additional insurance expense.
Okay.
So that's exactly how it is.
All right.
How it's budgeted.
Thank you.
Anybody else want to speak to the operating budget? Joe Guthrie, recognized to speak.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Moderator. Just a comment about the seniors again, and being one. I know that on the town side, there is an article trying to adjust the taxes based on ages. It would change depending on how old you were at a certain point in time. And although it's something that the town can act on, I think if you saw the petition, it isn't just 25 names. There are a number of names on there. So there is the same concern about the seniors and the fact that the rate has gone up every year and year for all of us. Thank you.
Anybody else want to speak to Article 3, the operating budget? I don't see anybody rising to speak. So Article 3, the operating budget, is hereby forwarded to the March 13th secret ballot, as is. Next article. Article 4, Capital Reserve Fund. The article says as follows: shall the voters of the Hampstead School District raise and appropriate up to $125,000 to be placed in the school renovation, reconstruction, and capital improvement capital reserve fund established in 2006, with such amount to be transferred from the June 30th, 2018 unreserved fund balance, parentheses, surplus, in excess of $150,000. And at the voting, this requires a majority vote. And then it says as follows: the first $150,000 of surplus shall return to the taxpayers. The next $125,000 of the surplus will be placed in the capital reserve fund. Any additional surplus will be returned to the taxpayers. The funds from this article come from the 2017/18 school budget surplus, not from additional taxes. And this is recommended by the school board 5-0 to 0. Unanimous. Anybody want to move that forward for discussion?
So moved.
Karen moves it.
I'll second.
Jason seconds. Okay, does anybody want to be heard in the capital reserve fund? Anybody from the administration first? Go ahead, Jason.
So I would just point out very briefly a couple of things on the capital reserve where there's sometimes some questions about it. The capital reserve comes from surplus, and just as the article states and the information in the article states, this only happens if there is first place, if there is a surplus. And the most common causes for us to have a surplus, a budget surplus, are things like, for instance, a couple of winters ago, we had a very mild winter, and you might have budgeted for, what we consider average heating costs, and then we have a very mild winter. Well, that causes a little bit of surplus. We may have a district employee very tenured in the district that leaves the district, and we may hire someone that is not quite as tenured, and so the pay scale is different, and so we realize a salary savings there. We may have a student who requires special education services who moves out of the district, and we've budgeted for those services that are no longer required. So there are a number of different causes or drivers that result in a surplus, but what's important to note about this is that this money is only set aside if there's a surplus. If there's not a surplus, then this money doesn't get set aside. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Anybody else want to speak to the Capital Reserve Fund? Oh, go ahead, Mr. Murphy.
How much money is in the fund now? What's the balance of that fund?
If I may, Mr. Moderator?
Go ahead, Mr. Dowd.
Approximately 471,000.
471,000.
We had a balance last year of approximately 564,000. If you recall, we had the $400,000 roof warrant that passed, which was to be coming out of the capital reserve. That total project cost was only $218,000.
Okay.
Plus our $125,000 contribution this year brings us to approximately 471,000.
125,000 from the last year's warrant?
Yep.
Okay. And then during the process of returning the surplus, did the school board retain any money?
Yes.
200,000.
200,000.
200,000?
Yep.
And how much is, I'm assuming that's a separate account?
Correct, and separate purposes.
Right. And how much is in that account?
That is just a flat amount, and every year, if they don't renew it, it expires.
It expires,
So it
okay.
doesn't build up.
Okay. And so with there are a balance of 470,000 in this fund, in addition to proposing a $7.4 million renovation to the central school, does the board feel that the town should put another 150,000 into this fund? Because you could run into a scenario that you have both articles pass. So I'm just curious as to what the board's feeling is in regards to it.
Someone on the board want to, Jason, you're recognized to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. That's a good question, Mr. Murphy, and it's a common one that we discuss. It's worth pointing out that the Capital Reserve Fund, generally speaking, funds things that are not associated with the Article 2. So, for instance, a boiler replacement. Long-term, sort of capital intensive, it could be repaving, the parking lot here at the middle school, or redoing the roof, the number of other projects. Yeah. Generalized maintenance on the long term, and we do have a capital improvement plan that lists out the projects that we have in our queue to spend this money on. So that information is available. We talk about it on a fairly regular basis. So if anybody wants to see the list, I think we'd be happy to share the list of the projects that we have sort of in the queue. So they're not the same. It's not the same as what we're asking for in Article 2.
Anybody else want to speak to the Capital Reserve Fund? Seeing nobody else wanting to speak, no one rising to talk. Article 4, the Capital Reserve Fund is hereby forwarded to the March 13th secret ballot as is. Go on to the next article. Article 5, general acceptance of reports. Shall the Hampstead School District accept reports of agents, auditors, and committees as written in the 2017 annual report? Majority vote required, recommended by the school board unanimously, 5-0-0. Anybody want to move that forward for discussion?
So moved.
For a
I'll second.
Anybody want to speak to the general acceptance of reports? Seeing no one wants to speak to the general acceptance of reports, Article 5 is hereby forwarded to the March 13th ballot, secret ballot as amended. And remember that, before I move for a recess, I'm sorry, I misspoke. As is. Thank you, Madam Clerk. I knew you'd take care of me. So I guess that concludes what's going on tonight. So what I suggest is, anything else from the school board? So I
No,
would
just
suggest-
remind everyone to vote on March 13th from 8 to 8 here at the Hampstead Middle School.
That's the second session, so I'm going to ask someone move to recess to the second session.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. We're on to the second session, March 13th, the school here, 8 to 8.
Thank you.